Hello, this is Chek. Welcome back to my video blog. Today I'd like to share a very interesting topic with you. The title of my presentation today is Meditation Tips, the I of the I, we, all. In my PPS Success Mastery program, I do a fair bit to inform people of the importance of taking the time and investing the energy to love yourself and take responsibility for yourself, your individual needs, as the essential foundation of any we relationship. It means you and any other, or any all relationship. In PPS, an all relationship emerges whenever a third person emerges. And I explained that our spiritual responsibility goes up with each level. So here you see my little I, the center of the target. We're always the center of our own universe. Next, we have relationships with individuals, mom, dad, brother, sister, co-worker, etc. And then whenever we, for example, if two people have a child, they're automatically at the all level, because now their own thoughts, words, and deeds are imprinted into another who is adding to the populace of the world. And however that individual participates really has an influence on how the world is. If we're all loving, the world is loving. If we're all angry, the world is angry. So it's very, very important, because unfortunately, due to largely confusion and misunderstandings, a lot of people's religious beliefs that emerge from their childhood programming have oriented them towards creating safety and security by doing things for others, or trying to meet conscious or unconscious expectations of others, such as being good or perfect or strong or beautiful, etc. And the all factor we're very, very influenced by, because if you're going to a church, then there's an influential all. If you're worried about issues of the world, such as pollution, war, you're worried about issues of the all. And as I often say, the issues of the all have become so overwhelming that oftentimes people have a very hard time meditating, because they're so wound up about issues of world peace, world hunger, stopping wars, fighting over, getting involved in the battle over protecting our food, and everything that is important, but must be understood to be something that we engage in under the power that we have or don't have within ourselves, with the clarity or confusion that we carry within ourselves. So ultimately, our capacity to engage at the we and the all level is utterly rooted in our capacity to engage with, nourish, love, relate to, and understand ourself. And my experience in my life is that the deeper I've gone within myself, the more I've understood my own pains, my own confusions and frustrations, my own challenges in personal relationships, and my own challenges with issues of the all. And my progressive growth in those understandings has, in my opinion, made my life much easier, because I'm able to see that the world is as it is, and it is the way it is because it has a function, which is to bring us into awareness, or self-realization with a capital S, to realize ourselves as an expression of the whole, as opposed to only being an individual. But paradoxically, when we engage our individuality fully and nourish it, it opens the door wide to our participation in the world through we relationships and all relationships. So it's a bit of a paradox. You got to be intimate with the I and sort of self-centered to have adequately come to know and understand and appreciate yourself and what you really are, which manifests in your relationships as empathy and compassion for others, because the deeper you look into yourself, the more you understand. And I'll try to show you more in that regard. So when we're talking about meditation, the word meditation could be replaced with the word centration. Sometimes it's depicted as meditation meaning concentration. Osho refers to meditation as concentration. So do others. I believe Ram Dass may have referred to meditation as concentration as well at some point. But oftentimes people get confused by the word concentration, thinking that meditation is an active process of trying to stop your mind. Meditation is a process of witnessing or letting go. In Taoist philosophy, wei, wu, wei means action, wu means without or not, wei, action, action without action. Meditation could be said as wu wei, or wei, wu wei, action without action, but we want to get rid of the first action, wu wei, which would be, going along for the ride but not trying to paddle the boat. So a passive approach, you're participating but you're not trying to force things to happen, label or judge. You're going for the ride as a participant witness, if you will, which is important because many people don't understand. They think meditation is another thing they have to do, like take the garbage out, clean the room, and then when you put meditation on a task list, the ego projects that it's going to be another thing that's going to take its time or take something away from it. But when you understand that meditation is centration, coming into your center and going into a state of detached witnessing, observing but not judging, then meditation really becomes much, in the beginning stages, kind of like watching a show, relaxing at the end of the day in front of television and letting yourself be entertained. Well, believe me, believe me when I tell you, meditation can be very entertaining. You'll be surprised what's hiding inside of that body-mind complex of yours, as I have been of mine. So let me just take you through a few steps to better understand the process, so that maybe by understanding it better, you're more inspired to either continue or to begin or to be more consistent. So here we have the I, then we have the we. So you see I'm showing a picture of somebody else. Hi, there's my friend. And then we have the world as a metaphor for the all. Now something really interesting happens. Our sense of consciousness, our individual consciousness, is what equates to the I in metaphysics. So the symbol I also equates to ego, or sense of border, barrier, self-definition, or I am not that. Or the I essentially splits subject into subject and object. So if I'm talking to you, I am expressing myself to you, so you become the object, and what's rising up in me becomes the subject. If I'm loving somebody else, they're the object of my love, and I am the subject flowing the energy and information through empathic and compassionate connection to the other, which is how I define love. You see I have a dotted outline for the Tai Chi symbol in here. There's something really important. You see, the Tai Chi symbol can also be broken down into is, which is consciousness. That is my friend. That isn't my next door neighbor. That is my mom. It isn't my father. So whenever we bring our focus to anything, we're going to create a little focus line here. If our concentration or our awareness is on mother or the world, then this is what we are conscious of. So that C relates to what we're focusing. Right now I'm focusing on you. I'm aware of you. And because I'm aware of you, if someone was standing behind me erasing the board, I may not know it. So I'm unconscious of what's behind me. So for all intents and purposes, you are my is. I is engaged with you, and I isn't engaged with what's behind me. If you have a coin and you look at the coin and it's got a head on it, the head is, but the tail isn't visible to you. So it's unconscious metaphorically. So whenever we focus on anything, the outer circle represents the whole of our life. It represents the whole of our potential experience. It represents everything around us. It represents nature, relationships, people, places, things. And we can only focus on one thing at a time. If you're typing someone's phone number into your phone, you're focusing on that person's phone number, but you're unconscious of all the other phone numbers in the directory in your phone. Now, this brings up a very, very important point that a lot of people don't really understand. This, what we're focusing on, is like a light, and everything else is essentially as though a shadow. It's there, but it's shadowed. We don't see it. And when we make a judgment, this person is good or is bad, we don't know usually the other side of the coin. We have to be aware of what good is. Good is good relative to what? Bad is bad relative to what? It takes a lot of spiritual bravery. For example, Jesus encouraged people to love thy enemy as thyself, or love thy neighbor as thyself. If someone punches you, turn the other cheek. Don't start a fight. It takes tremendous spiritual bravery to meditate, for example, on someone that you really don't like or who has really harmed you, and be brave enough to look at what's in the unconscious elements, or what we're afraid to look at, because the ego will do a lot of interesting things to justify its position. And that includes doing things to make sure it maintains the right to be angry at somebody, that it has strong emotions, and that person will never be this, or should never be that, or they should burn that guy, kill him. All these things become potentially problematic, because when you do enough meditation and you grow enough spiritually, the person that you don't like, who you're saying isn't this or isn't that, or is this or isn't that, turns out to be an expression of yourself. And psychology is very, very well demonstrated that usually the things that we don't like about ourselves paradoxically become the triggers in relationships to others that make us not like them. In other words, if I'm too opinionated and I meet someone else that's as opinionated as me, the tendency is going to be to make that person wrong and perceptually not like them, but in reality, they're actually triggering the part of me that needs awareness. I may not think that I'm opinionated in relationships, but if I pay close attention to what's coming to me through gossip, through honest feedback from others, and from my own willing participation, and allowing my spirit to show me what's in my unconscious by simply relaxing, then I could actually, in a very healthy and very self-responsible way, come to the awareness that maybe I am too opinionated. If I just look at all the things I was dead sure of but found out later that I was wrong about, that alone, through witnessing, could make me realize maybe I'm a little bit too in love with my own ideas and need to pay a little bit more attention to what others are saying, or dig deeper into the concept before I get so rigid about it. For example, whenever you run into someone with a dogma, whether it be a religious dogma, a food dogma, vegetarianism, meat eating, Christianity, whatever it might be, the dogma is their isness. But the dogma always comes with circumscription. It cuts out the rest of everybody else's wants, feelings, and needs, and creates a shadow, and the shadow, unfortunately, can bite. It means you're unconscious of what you're creating in your life, and when it shows up, many people take the victim role and blame it on other people, instead of accepting that by definition of a relationship, meaning that there's a 50-50 deal going on here. If you don't like it, and you don't think that you created it, it's probably a real good indication, as Arnold Patton says, that you're creating it unconsciously. One of my key points here is that by meditation, you can gain growth and awareness without confrontation. If you don't meditate, then you get Spirit teaches you where you're stuck by sending the pain teacher to split you open. Losing jobs, divorces, health problems, diseases, bankruptcies, whatever. And trust me, I've been split open plenty of times, and I've come to the conclusion after 53 years of living, it's far less effort and far more rewarding to take an active part in your own healing than it is to wait for a surgeon to come put you back together again, because most doctors and therapists aren't sufficiently evolved to pull you aside and say, you know, the reason you got this disease is because you're not participating in your own growth and development in the following areas, etc., unless you're lucky enough to have had Carl Jung as your physician or somebody with that level of wisdom. Now, down below here, you have just symbols I created for the chakras. This just means vibration or voice, music, hopefully. The 5th chakra. The 6th and the 7th, 6 would be your ability to use your imagination and your mental faculty to create. The 7th would be your intuitive faculty, which allows you to have awareness of the invisible connections to persons, places, and things. Expressing your creative energy through voice and creative actions, such as the use of your hands and arms. The heart, integrating the above with the below, the I with the we, the I, we, and all. This right here, the solar plexus, means sun plexus. In our conversation relates to libido, and the term libido is not here used as my willingness or readiness to have sex. It means willpower. It means the capacity to transform something, to make something happen. Somebody with a high libido, a man with a high libido, could get a lot of women pregnant, which would express that he has a lot of power to create. So libido's here using the term will, and it is really an expression of spirit expressed in a given direction. Spirit here, as expressed by the Tai Chi symbol, which relates to the 2nd chakra, that's the 3rd, relates to core sex energy or your creative potential at large. This is the water center of the body. This is where the adrenal glands are. And when people have low creative sex energy, they usually begin showing symptoms of adrenal fatigue and hormonal imbalances, which comes with lots of mental, emotional, and physical symptoms, by the way. It doesn't just show up on your door and say, here I am. It comes progressively, and unfortunately, in our culture, people just run around hoping they can sell their problem to someone else for $75 an hour or get a magic pill. But these types of things that we have challenges in our culture are only just indications of the need for meditation and centrating oneself and becoming honest with oneself and looking at both halves of an individual's mind, that which they can see and perceive, which they label, but that which is behind it that they often are ignorant of, but often so assured that they're aware of, but not. So then we get down here to the root chakra, which I've exemplified as a red square. The root chakra is signified by the vibration and color red. It relates to meaning and values. We have the greatest sense of meaning where we have consciously stated values or potentially unconsciously stated values. But it means something, for example, to me, to eat organic food. It's a value because not only is it important for me, it's important for my performance in relationships and my contribution to keeping the world healthy. So there's a value. This is to make a key point. Many people have asked me, why bother meditating? It's just like you're sitting there staring at your eyelids. Well, that concept, that question, that misunderstanding of meditation brings me right to this very point. The purpose of meditation, aside from what I'll explain, is to get clear on the events in your life and find out where they do or do not have meaning and do or do not relate to your values. For example, if you get 2 job offers at once, both giving you a high rate of pay, the same pay, let's say, but one you're going to be working for a company that is a polluter of the environment, and the other produces the same product but does it using natural products or holistically, and maybe your best friend works at the polluting company's job party, you might want to go work there to hang out with your friend and have company, but the other party you might be saying, wait, does that fit my values? Same kind of product, same paycheck, but just slightly different values, and that's when meditation becomes essential. Whenever you have a question to ask, because if you don't ask that question, then unconsciously you're aware of what you're doing, and unconsciously aware that you're going against your values, and every day you get the paycheck for working against your values, you're holding guilt, shame, self-blame, and negatively charged energy within yourself that produces symptoms, and so then you're spending all your money from your high-paying job running around to doctors and therapists who will happily medicate you, mobilize you, poke you, roll you, dip you in flour, roll you in honey, and bake you in the oven, all for an untold large number of dollars, when really this could have just been broken down into, what are my values? What is my potential? What am I willing to enliven and put my willpower to? And on that topic, meditation is very important, because once we understand meaning and value, we develop a functional antagonist to the third chakra. People with too much third chakra energy are like bulls in a china shop. They trample over people, don't worry about whether they're killing the environment, as long as they get lots of money out of it. But once we're clear on our meaning and values, we get another quality that is the, shall we say, feminine element of willpower, which is won't power. I won't eat that. I won't stay up that late. So the yin of your yang libido is the square that squares the circle and captures the light and defines it as, this is who I am, this is what my love is expressing, this is where my money's going, and therefore what I'm growing, because your choices at the I energize the we and the all. If you don't like Monsanto, for example, buying their products unconsciously, yet telling people you want to help the world, is expressing that you are in need of meditation. So now, whenever we go into meditation, things do happen. Things happen, man. It ain't passive in there. There's a movie projector inside of us called an ego. And our emotions rise up in us. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people have told me, many people, more than I can count, because I've taught thousands of people to do various types of meditation all over the world. Many of them say, Paul, when I do my Tai Chi or when I do my meditation, anger rises up in me, or fear rises up in me, or jealousy rises up in me. And one of my common responses are to those people is, that's the poison that you've drank, hoping somebody else would die. Our anger, if not looked at holistically through meditative practice or therapeutic practices, is usually projected at somebody else as a means of letting us know how much pain and negative will we are sending in that direction, without realizing that we must create it within ourselves to be aware that we're doing it to them. That's drinking the poison and hoping they're going to die. So meditation is a time when all the poison that we've cultivated within ourselves and hoping of, shall we say, killing the other, rises up to the surface, where it can be effectively engaged in with adult awareness and converted into something that has meaning and value for us, that we can spiritualize or worship as our own growth, and that we can then utilize our will or our libido to change our behavior to be more congruent with the person that not only we want to be, but that we would like to engage with in relationships in the world. It's common human behavior to wait for everybody else to fix themselves so our life is better, but not do it ourselves. In other words, the world is fucked up, not me, is the motto. Okay? So I'm going to share something with you that it's an interesting experience. And I've experienced this a lot, and I got a great explanation from this listening to one of the lectures from the Jung Institute in Zurich, and I don't know who made the statement because it was somebody in the audience, but it triggered me to be able to encapsulate something very nicely that I've experienced many times, and I want to share with you based on my knowledge of how the inner self works. The ego makes judgments, and judgments are always attached with emotions. Remember, a thought can't be felt without an emotion, so all thoughts have an emotional correlate. Hormones are the mediators between the thought world and the emotional world. Hormones are the chemicals that turn your thought into an experience as an emotion. So the thought and the emotion, or the judgment, produces triggers in us if we feel as though we've been harmed in some way. Triggers link themselves up to different judgments or fears that actually have some level of information in them. I'll give you a simple example. When I was a kid, I bent over to pet a friend's new dog, and the dog jumped up and bit me right in the eye, right here. And when I stood up, it was hanging from my face, trying to tear my face apart. So that created an emotion and a trigger in me. And the trigger was my unconscious mind, the shadow elements of myself, the positive elements of the shadow. Now, whenever I get near a dog of any size or shape, the little boy in me rises up, and the trigger is, remember, dogs do bite and they can hurt you even when they look friendly. The complex is any number of the thoughts or beliefs attached to that specific experience. For example, if a child gets physically abused by a parent or sexually abused by the parent, there will be an emotional charge there, and through the process of association, the child now can begin to associate pain, fear, and separation with the concept of father or the concept of mother. And for the child, the concept of father equals the concept of the male, and mother equals the concept of the female. So unconsciously, the child now could begin to have a complex. My teacher is mean and I don't like him, without realizing he is projecting his father through the trigger onto the teacher. So imagine when you're dealing with something that close to the core of an individual, such as mother and father, the number of associations and connections in the complexes. Think of how many men you get involved with and have good or not so good relationships, and you can clearly track those things back to your developmental period where you were programmed to see, feel, and perceive what a man was and what's expected of a man. So if a child expects a man to beat it up, it's going to be nervous. And even if it grows up to be a man, and paradoxically, children like that grow up to armor themselves. So what do you find? You find them in kickboxing, you find them in boxing, you find them beating heavy bags, you find them in combative sports where they have got to confront that fear of men being scary, and women do all sorts of their own things in the same vein in other ways. So what we have then is a trigger that produces a complex. Complexes begin to interact with each other through the psychological concept of association. Dad is bad, therefore all men are bad. Dad was wearing red the day he beat me up, so now whenever I see red, I get triggered and I don't know why. An activated complex is what I call a form of artificial intelligence, because it can be so strong in us we don't know where the fear or the anxiety or the guilt or the shame is coming from, which can cause all sorts of digestive problems, eliminative problems, skin problems, cognitive problems, and the list just goes long, 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 long down the line. The point is that this is very likely to be artificial intelligence. It seems very, very real to you. A fantastic example of an activated complex is someone with post-traumatic stress syndrome that's come back from the war. They're walking down the street feeling normal, a car backfires, and the complex is triggered and activated, and as far as they're concerned, they're in a battlefield and they can behave very, very radically and potentially dangerously. Thus, many of them are medicated. So this is a very, very important concept, because when you go into meditation, particularly if your eyes are closed, most techniques of meditation draw your senses inward, so your energy turns into you. If I'm looking at the camera, I'm projecting all my energy. My psyche is outwardly directed. My energy is projecting outward. But if I close my eyes, and go completely into myself, the energy now starts to fill me up. I'm drawing the energy of spirit, environment, breath, nutrition into myself, not projecting it out. To help explain this, a trigger is a thought, emotion package that is facilitated. Most kids were spanked more than once or abused more than once. Most people were told they were ugly more than once. My teachers used to tell me I'll never amount to anything. So when I hear those words, it can be a trigger. And when I was younger, it used to make me say, oh yeah, watch this. And it would turn my libido on full force, but often, to a level that's not healthy. And this leads kids to, and people to, violent outbursts, like shooting people in McDonald's. Okay? So the point that I want to make here is that we have an opportunity in meditation to identify these things, and when you have a trigger, you have a pathway in the nervous system that is facilitated. The law of facilitation, which is a law of physiology, says when an impulse passes once through a given set of neurons to the exclusion of others, it tends to do so on a future occasion, and each time it traverses this path, the resistance will be smaller. This is well explained in the stages of learning. When we learn any new task, we are first consciously incompetent. Please show me how to do it. I don't know how. I'm conscious that I need to know, but I don't know how. Next, we become, for repetition, we become competent while we're conscious. As long as I'm paying attention to what I'm doing, I can do it. So first you learn to drive a car. You don't know how to do it. You're consciously incompetent. Then you drive, take some driver's education, but you don't want the radio on. You don't want your friends talking because you've got to really focus so you don't crash the car. You're consciously competent. But through time and repetition, you become unconsciously competent. Now you drive through intersections and go, holy shit, I don't even remember if the light was green or not, because you were driving through your unconscious. So when triggers and complexes become activated regularly enough, they become unconscious, and therefore they are facilitated. So once you start doing Tai Chi, Qigong, many types of yoga practices, breathing practices, or meditation practices, the point is all the energy that you're projecting out, and by the way, Carl Jung beautifully says over-intellectualization is often an attempt to avoid experiencing whatever it is that you're intellectualizing. In other words, in Osho's words, becoming a pseudo-expert is a way of escaping the responsibility of doing the work to become a true master. So often we see with these complex where there's just over-intellectualization that it's really a cloak due to the fear of engagement and the fear of failure or not being successful, which all goes back to these activated complexes. So as that energy flows into you, hey, guess what? Wherever you got a trigger in a complex is where you are facilitated. So paradoxically, I'm sitting here with the concept, I don't need to think about anything, I don't want to think about anything, and as soon as I close my eyes and start relaxing, boom, daddy this, mommy that, teacher this, boss this, brother this, sister this, Paul this, whoever that, and it's a big story, like a mumble jumble, like a replay of all the crap in your life off. And now it can have the beautiful in it too, don't forget that. The problem is people then start getting more judgmental, more engaged, which means you are adding energy to that circuit. You yourself are contributing to the trigger and the flow of energy into the complex, which activates it even more strongly, and most people give up and run from meditation. And by the way, as a little side note, psychedelic drugs do exactly that to you. But you see, you can stop a meditation and get up and walk away. But when you're in an ayahuasca journey, or you're using LSD or mushrooms or something like that, any number of psychedelics, once the complex is activated, ladies and gentlemen, you go for the ride for 6 to 10 hours. And so people who are immature blame it on the drug and say, oh, that's a bad drug, man, bad trip, bad trip. No, the drug's nothing but a molecule that's disabling the ego's filter system so that all the shit that we're burying as triggers and complex comes rising right up to the surface. what you need to do, instead of blaming it on the drug, is find someone to help you learn to process the stuff in a controllable fashion before you strap yourself into a fighter jet and go shooting off the end of an aircraft carrier at, you know, rapid rate when you can't even drive a car, metaphorically. So be warned, those of you psychedelic lovers and those of you thinking about going on a shamanic journey, because a shamanic journey is not a party, it's a trip right through your shit. And remember, flowers grow in shit, so you got to have both, okay? So now, what are we going to do about this? Well, let's talk about some meditation tips. Just to summarize, what I've just said is when you do any meditative practice and you turn your sensory information inward, you are now breathing, holding still, relaxing, and charging your inner world, your core psyche. And because triggers and complexes are facilitated, they rise up inside you as though movies and thoughts are going crazy, and it seems like your head's going crazy. But I'm telling you, the more of these things that you have, the better, because you're now taking stock of all the little creatures inside making decisions for you when you don't think you're making those decisions, and screwing up your relations when you don't think you're doing it. And that's how you grow yourself into someone who can more effectively contribute to we relationships and the world. Okay? So practice tips for meditation. When I say meditation, there's a number of different types. I teach zone exercises and a couple of methods, different methods in here, several different methods of zones, but zones are active meditations orienting you toward the energy pathways, the nerves or the plexuses and glandular systems and circulatory systems that are relevant to where the body tends to hold these issues, which is depicted here. In other words, I have meditations for the kinds of challenges that emerge when we bury stuff in each of these locations, in How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. In my last 4 doctors, You'll Ever Need How to Get Healthy Now, I show you actually how to not only do active meditation, but I show you how to use things like tuning forks to enhance the meditation and open up these pathways. And in the companion audios, where I go into the deeper metaphysical principles of the 4 doctors, Dr. Quiet Audio has 7 active meditations I use for people that are busy in the head, loaded up with complexes, and need a sort of a more gentle ride in that works better for wound up people. So you can get the Dr. Quiet Audio if you're interested. So whenever you're going to engage in a meditation of active or passive type, active meaning the body is moving, such as Tai Chi, Qigong, zone exercises. Passive mean you're either sitting, lying down, or something like that. Step number 1 is unwind. As I tell my students, if you wind a cylinder head bolt down to 110 foot-pounds of torque with a torque wrench, it's going to take at least 111 to unwind it. Most people go into meditation when they're all wound up and pressurized from their day. It's far, far wiser to estimate how wound you are. Some days I have to go into a gym or go outside and lift heavy rocks. It might take, me to lift for 20 minutes, 30 minutes of picking up heavy stuff that really outgasses me and lets me move the tension of the day out of myself into the earth, so to speak. Then when I'm calm, it's easy to get centered. It's very easy at that point to get centered. So tip number 1, to the degree you're wound, you must use something about that potential energy to unwind you. And when you sit down on your so-called rest period and it's easy for you to relax into yourself, you are now ready to meditate, whether it be active or passive, Tai Chi, Qigong, or seated meditation, or laying down meditation. Next, you need to make sure that you have comfort in the environment. You should have chosen whether you're going to use an active or passive meditation after you've done the unwinding. Next, I prefer, for many reasons, meditation with eyes closed. Even if I'm doing a Tai Chi ruler, for example, I want my eyes closed to keep that energy in. Otherwise, we just kind of keep engaging out there and never meet the dragons right here. So when we go into meditation, it's about witnessing without judgment. Observe. Something rises up. Boy, my dad is an asshole. Don't get engaged in that, because every time you do, you add energy to the pathway, you facilitate the trigger in the complex, and the artificial intelligence gets stronger. Your goal is to identify artificial intelligence and, as a metaphor, begin to prune the tree by disengaging your energy. You can't cut those things out. As Osho says, you can cut open a dancer, but you won't find the dance. Well, all anatomy dissections in the world have not found a trigger or a complex, but they're spiritually alive in you. They're subtle energies. So, as we witness, we go without judging, we simply observe. To judge means to separate yourself. That guy's an asshole creates separation. I see my father acting toward me in a way that is painful is an observation. I see my father acting toward me in a way that's painful. I observe it. My dad's a real asshole is now a separation, and guess what? As soon as you do that, you create pain. Nobody truly at the core of their being wants to be separated from their mother, their father, their brother, their sister, their lover, their friend. And those that think they do are in need of meditation and healing. Now, to help you with this concept of observing in PPS Success Mastery training, I teach my students the concept of the lifeguard tower. When you're in meditation, you got to climb up the lifeguard tower. You have to get above all the people laying on the beach. Only when you're on the lifeguard tower can you witness the beach and the ocean, and you get to see the sharks coming before they get to the beach and eat people, which means making judgments and getting trapped in your meditation. Now, if the lifeguard sees a couple of hot babes over there fondling each other, male lifeguard or gay female lifeguard, you can see that they're going to direct their orientation to one point, but meanwhile, just like wherever their consciousness is, we become unconscious of everything else. So when we're in meditation, we don't want to be conscious of Dad the shark, or Mom the shark, or the guy that ripped me off. It takes spiritual bravery to disengage in those judgments, step back, and be aware of the whole scene. Let it rise up without watching. I tell my students, meditation is like standing on a bridge. If you see garbage float by in the river, you might observe the garbage and say it's sad that people throw garbage in the river. But if you get all pissed off about, oh, those fuckers, I can't believe they're doing that again, and jump in and chase the garbage down, well, the question I have for you is, are you going to live on the bridge and do that every day for the rest of your life? Because the garbage is going to keep coming. So disengaging and witnessing, you can have empathy for those people that they're confused or that they're undereducated or whatever, but don't engage in the battle, or you're not meditating, you're just participating in the same disease that got the garbage in the river, because that's probably a reaction to one of their own complexes. Okay? So the inward flow of life force often activates complexes and triggers. By witnessing and observing from the lifeguard tower, you engage your new awareness. As you have new awarenesses rising up in you, remember, no judgments, just observations, you can engage your awareness through journaling, drawing or painting, using clay figures or figurines, and story writing are just some of the ways you can do this. These are some of the ways I do it with my clients and with myself. There's an ancient concept that's more popular now, and probably Dr. Dan Siegel, the author of The Neurobiology of We, Mindsight, Brainstorm, and a few others, who's a genius psychiatrist, has kind of made it more popular, the cliche, name it and tame it. In other words, if you can recognize that your dad or your mom is the shark that keeps coming at you from the inside and triggering off triggers and complexes, then you can say, that emotion, that's my father rising up in me. So we're going to call that energy Daddy, or whatever you want to call it, Bob or whatever. And when you feel it, before you start engaging, when you become, now you're becoming aware, it's my father in me rising up in me. And so then you can tame it. You can say, okay, I don't need that much of Dad in me today. I really would much rather be myself than be someone who is expressing an artificial form of intelligence through a complex. So when you get these things coming up in you, don't try to fix them while you're in meditation. Believe me, if there's significant, they'll hang around for a while. It'll be just like a dream. But don't wait too long, or like a dream, it'll disappear on you. So get into your journal, draw it or paint it, put it into a figure, or write it out as a story. Write it out just like you were having a dream, and then you can begin to engage it, recognize it, feel the qualities of it in a safe, controlled environment where there's no threat. And through this engagement, you start to actually become very, very aware of these types of energies. And what was once a painful form of energy now, interestingly enough, becomes the impetus, the libido, the spirit and the will for transformation. My dad hurt me, but made me aware that I also hurt other people, and now I'm aware through meditation I don't want that much of my father in me, because I don't want other people to have to go through what I went through. And now the pain is consciousness making. That's the key point, is that pain is consciousness making. Pain brings things out of our unconscious, because most of the things that cause us pain in life we blame other people for doing or think were done to us. So the pain triggers the aha moment. I am now having an experience that I didn't think I created. Therefore, if I meditate on this, I can take the energy that produced the pain and I can convert it into something that is congruent with my own meaning, my own values, and facilitates my own spirit and the use of my own willpower or won't power. And that's what spiritual growth and development is. Really, that is an encapsulation of spiritual development. Okay, that's enough for me. What was that, 10-minute blog? Hey, no fast food education here, baby. Junk food will kill you, and fast food education will confuse you and turn you into a pseudo-expert. And what I just shared with you today is nothing but an invitation to go into the practice. Have a look at some of the resources I've given you. Fully engage. If you want to learn more, come see me at, or any of my instructors at Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1, Chek Exercise Coach. PPS Success Mastery Program can be done right online. There's 12 lessons dealing with all sorts of stuff like this to truly help you. For those of you that are really stuck and want a deeper individualized program, look at my 1, 2, 3, 4 for Overcoming Addiction, Obesity and Disease audio workbook program with about 9 hours of this type of education that's very, very powerful and very, very helpful and could save your life, literally. So thanks for joining me today. I'm Paul Chek.